All right. It is 3 o'clock. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order and move this process along. Paula, would you like to do roll call?
Matt Guillory.
Here.
Jorge Chonico.
Here.
Dylan Bradway. Betsy Brunstetter. Present. Donna Cervantes.
Here.
Tyler Holmes.
Here.
Lee Peoples.
Here.
Ben Sellers. And James Barnum. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Let's move to approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the December 15th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Minutes from that meeting are approved. We have no cases that were withdrawn. Michael, my understanding is that we do have a continuance request now.
Yes, the applicant on item 7A has requested a continuance to the February 22nd meeting.
Okay, so the SPUD for 323 Northwest 23rd will be continued to, is that next month?
You would need to take an action on that
Okay.
when you come to that part of the agenda.
All right. Nothing in the consent docket, so let's move straight along to the cases for individual consideration. There's one of those. Oh. We need a motion for that continuance?
Move to continue
Second.
to February.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Jorge. Okay, so the SPUD for 323 Northwest 23rd is officially continued, and now we will move on to cases for individual consideration. 1329 Northwest 23rd Street.
Yes, this is a proposed mural at the front of the church located at 1329 Northwest 23rd Street, Trinity Baptist Church. We presented to you in the staff report our recommendation for approval and wanted to pass along that at the Arts Commission meeting on Monday the 23rd, the Arts Commission did recommend approval of that mural as well to the Commission. So that concludes our presentation. I'm prepared to respond to any questions the Commission may have.
Anyone have any specific questions about this? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this? All right. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Brunstetter, second by Cervantes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. It's approved for 1329 Northwest 23rd Street. Moving on, the second SPUD that's listed on our agenda for other business is in front of us now, 1639 Northwest 15th Street.
Yes, this is a proposed SPUD. It's, I guess, probably, it's got a lot of moving parts, a little more complicated than most SPUDs that we see. First of all, it's in two pieces. Tract 1 is within the Urban Design Overlay District, basically in this portion of the site that touches Northwest 16th and the east side of Black Boulder. Tract 2 is the southern portion of the site, basically the rectangle at the bottom here. And that is outside the Urban Design Overlay District. However, the Commission has the power to review and comment upon SPUDs that have, and the impact that the SPUD may or may not have on the district itself when the project is adjacent to the district. And consequently, we've brought it before the Commission for input and recommendation to the Planning Commission on the SPUD request. Essentially, things on the northern part of the SPUD would remain unchanged with the possible exception of the fact that they would be allowed to have food trucks in the parking lot that's proposed in conjunction with this spud. That's the most significant change for the northern part. The southern part proposes additional parking on the east side of Track 2, and it proposes a 3-story building that's approximately 16,000 square feet in size, 5,500 square feet per floor. And the proposal indicates that they would be having a retail commercial use on the first floor, and the top 2 floors would be residential, and I believe it's a total of 10 units on those 2 floors. We have outlined for you in our staff report a number of concerns with respect to how this particular part of the spud would impact the district, and I think most importantly, we have 3 points of concern with respect to this proposal, and particularly with respect to Track 2. First is that you're kind of diluting the commercial node that is the center core of the Plaza District, which is along the corridor of 16th Street Northwest, by expanding it southward and out and away from the core of the district. That's one concern. The other is that with a 3-story structure, it's probably not a bad idea to consider having a 3-story structure within the Plaza District, but we think it would be more appropriate to have that type of intensification of density to occur more towards the center core area of the district as opposed to outside the district on the fringe. So those are their 2 main concerns about this, and for those reasons we have recommended to the Commission a change that would reduce the height of the building that would be allowed in this spud to only 2 stories as opposed to the 3 that is proposed. Additionally, we did receive a revised version of this spud from the applicant on the date that the UDC agenda packet went out last Tuesday. We didn't have time to review that version of the spud the day the packet went out, and therefore we sent out the original version that we had reviewed as in conjunction with the staff report that we prepared for you. Since that time, we've had time to go through it and I guess assess what the changes are and how they relate to what we discussed in the staff report, and also the conditions that we prepared for you as part of that staff report. And we sent out to you a copy of that version of the SPUD as well as our assessment by email yesterday. I'd like to take a little time to go through that with you and let you know where we stand as a result of that revised version. And just so you know, I've also heard there's a newer, even more revised version out there that we haven't even seen yet. So first of all, the change that we had requested in the overall maximum building height in the SPUD has not changed, and therefore our condition A on the last page of the document is still something that we're recommending the Commission consider in their recommendation to the Planning Commission on this project. Condition B related to the amount of square footage that was allowed per floor in the building, and originally that number was 25,000 square feet per floor, which would have been basically 90% of Track 2 in terms of lot coverage. And we felt that was a problem, and in fact, in discussions with the applicant since then, we've determined that was an error on their part, and they've since made a correction to that to a maximum of 6,000 square feet per floor. So condition B is no longer necessary. We had a recommendation for condition C, which is additional language regarding the screening of dumpsters, and I wanted to point out to you that there are two provisions in this SPUD, one that relates specifically to site per screening, and a separate one later in the document that relates specifically to the screening of dumpsters. And therefore, because our concern is covered in the second section that talks about dumpsters, condition C in your staff report is no longer necessary. On condition D, we had made a recommendation to the commission that additional language be added to the paving section, such that there be specifications made in the SPUD to the quality and type of decomposed granite that would be used in the parking stalls. And again, I want to clarify that the proposal is not to use the whole entire parking lot in DG, just the parking stalls. So it's our understanding that the drive aisles that access the parking stalls would be concrete. However, at the same time, we've seen situations in the past where DG has been approved where there's a lot of silt and mud that generates out of whatever material they ended up using, and it ends up getting either flowing out into the street or being tracked out into the street with tires. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen if it's allowed by the SPUD to use the DG in the parking stalls. And secondarily, we also suggested language in that condition D that talked about the use of drainage controls to contain that DG on site in heavy rain events. The fifth condition that we had prepared for you in our staff report related to the parking and the fact that if you use DG, you can't exactly stripe the parking stalls either. And that's a requirement of the code, so if they don't address it in the SPUD, then they would have to get a separate variance for it. We had suggested additional language that addressed that. They didn't do it exactly the way we had asked them to do it, but they have, in the revised version of the SPUD, provided a separate section that talks about parking lot striping, and therefore condition E, as we had prepared it for you in the staff report, is no longer necessary. That completes our assessment of how the new version of the SPUD lines up and addresses the conditions that we had prepared for you initially in the report. I did want to point out to you, however, that the new version of the SPUD also raised some additional issues that we felt that is still appropriate for the Commission to take into consideration in their recommendation to the Planning Commission. The first is that there is a typographical error in the document that needs to be corrected. The word track needs to be changed to tracked. That's misuse of that word in the particular context of this document. In section 1.4, maximum number of buildings, we wanted that corrected to actually just insert a number that indicates the actual number of buildings that are existing on track 1 today, and I believe that number today is 5. So that's just a change that would be corrected in this version of the document. The third item was section 1, or 8.1, freestanding signs. This is a comment we probably could have made earlier on in the process, but we didn't really pick up on it until we saw the second version of the document. They are proposing that, first of all, frankly, they're proposing that there are no pole signs allowed, and that's a good thing. But they are talking about having some freestanding signs that we think are particularly large for a site in this particular location with respect to the surrounding uses. And therefore, we're asking that the Commission consider a change that would reduce the size of the proposed freestanding signs from 8 feet tall to 6 feet tall, and from 100 square feet to 80 square feet. And we also asked the Commission make in their recommendation a change that would limit the number of freestanding signs on each in this SPUD to 1 per tract. That's 1 for the northern site and 1 for the southerly site. The new version of the SPUD has some language in it that talks about preserving some trees that are existing, and they are basically in the northern part of the SPUD, abutting the western frontage of tract 1. You can't see it in this version of the site plan because this is showing some angled stalls that have not yet been approved by the Traffic Commission. What's there now is actually some on-site parking stalls, and they're buffered in this area next to the Mule building by, I think, 3 or 4 mature trees that are in that area. And they've asked in the SPUD that they be able to reduce the width of the sidewalk that gets built in this area where the trees are, so the trees can be preserved to a maximum width of 3 feet. That's not a legal width. The minimum width is at least 4 feet and perhaps 5. We're still trying to verify that as to whether or not it's a 4 or 5 foot requirement, but at minimum 4 feet. So we want to make sure that that gets into the SPUD. This is item 5 that we had in our email to you yesterday, relates to paving again, and we wanted to make sure. Another instance we've seen where DG has been used in the parking lot is that the landscaping that's adjacent to the stalls or other areas of the parking lot is not protected when you use DG unless you have some curbing or wheel stops to provide that protection. And without that protection, the plants often get run over by cars maneuvering in the parking lot. So we wanted to have the commission include a revision to section 2.4 paving that requires the addition of language concrete curbing and or wheel stops be installed as necessary to protect all proposed landscaping in or adjacent to the parking lot. This is a minor point. Our item 6 in our email yesterday is talking about a heading essentially that used to be in the original version of the SPUD. It said other after, I think it's item 2.5. In the new version that we saw from last week, that heading disappeared, so we wanted to be reinserted and fixed, just formatted accordingly. The 7th item in our assessment of the new version of the SPUD was related to the parking lot itself. As you can see, the plan that's been submitted is not dimensioned. We don't have any idea how wide the drive aisles are or the parking stalls or anything else like that. But the parking section of the SPUD does include a statement that says that parking stalls shown in Exhibit B site plan shall be deemed to satisfy the required parking for all uses within the SPUD. And we're comfortable with doing that, but only if we know that the stalls and the drive aisles are all meeting minimum city codes for dimensions. So consequently, we're asking that the parking section be revised to include a statement that says all parking stalls and drive aisles shown in Exhibit B site plan shall be built to meet the applicable minimum dimensional requirements per Section 59-10-600. So to summarize, we have, I think, 3 of the original conditions in our staff report that can be deleted, and that would be conditions B, C, and E. And then, however, so we're down to 2 conditions, but then after our initial additional assessments that I just went through, there are 1, 2, probably 7 other changes that we'd like to have included in our in the Commission's recommendation to the Planning Commission. I do want to point out that we have received, I think, 2 letters in support of this SPUD, and those were transmitted to you by email and also hard copies provided on the dais this afternoon. And then we also received 1 letter yesterday in opposition to the SPUD, which again was also transmitted to you by email and provided to you in hard copy at the dais today. I think with that, we're ready to respond to any questions you may have before the applicant comes up to speak.
I will be absent from this.
Michael, in the staff recommendations, Part D, the tail end of that, the staff recommends appropriate surface drainage controls to contain it, meaning the decomposed granite on the site. What would those appropriate surface drainage controls consist of?
Just physical barriers that might consist of metal bands or other kinds of insertions that can be put into the ground to kind of contain the runoff.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, it appears that there are so many, I mean, Michael, I appreciate the fact that you've gone through this with a fine-tooth comb, but it appears there are so many changes to this that you're rewriting it. And I would like to ask the applicant if they would be willing to continue this project or this application.
And Michael, did you also say that there are further changes that have been submitted that we haven't seen yet?
I'm told that there is a version of the SPUD up there now that does include a change, for example, of that 3-foot wide sidewalk to a 4-foot wide sidewalk, but again, we haven't seen that version, so we have nothing to comment on.
My name's Jeff Struble, live at 1916 Northwest 18th. I'm the applicant. We've been working on this for a long time. We've been met with Gatewood Neighborhood Association, the Plaza District Association, worked extensively with Class and 10 Penn Neighbors Hood Association and some of the neighbors around there. So the SPUD has changed as we went along, and I think some of the confusion was staff sent Michael an old version of the SPUD, but from one of the last meetings that Class and 10 Penn had, we changed some things that they wanted to see changed. But really, we came up with a lot better SPUD working with the neighbors. So I think we have a really good SPUD. I think he said, I think some of of these problems were already in there, just Michael got the wrong version from staff. I really would not like to have submitted this because of the holidays. I mean, you know, last year for the SPUD. So I've been waiting a couple months to get here, and we've been working on it, you know, a good part of the year. And, you know, we met with, like, Bob Bright this summer, and he thought it was a great project, liked what we were doing, thought the building was appropriate, and the mixed use and the size was good. We met with Meg Salyer. She thought the same. J.J. Chambliss said the same, and his whole staff is in favor of and supports this SPUD and the size of the building. I think everything in Track 1 that's under urban design, we've met everything that Michael was concerned with. I think the only thing that we, just the size of the building is the only thing on Track 2. Everything else we're fine with the changes that Michael made. So I'd like to go forward with this if that would be.
The height of the building is not okay?
Right. The height of the building, which is in Track 2, which is not in urban design, is the 3-story is what I'd want to see. That's the only thing that, and everything else I'm fine with on the sign. I think there was a thing to go from 8 feet to 6 feet, and, you know, that was just kind of verbiage that was in the SPUD, you know, so we're not wanting a really big sign. And another thing was the sidewalk. In matter of fact, if there's trees that you can see there by the first building right there, there's 3 trees down a little bit lower. Not there, down right there. Those 3 trees there are existing and big, and we're wanting the option to do a smaller sidewalk so we can save those trees. But 4 feet, you know, is fine, and if we have to take the trees out, that's fine. We're working with Wallace Engineering right now, and they're going to be taking care of the drainage and engineering the site. So that'll be all up to code with their, you know, civil engineers. So can I answer any other questions?
I'll just spew out. I was thinking this sounded like a fine project. I drove over there thinking, you know, look at all the vibrance and you know, a lot of it has to do with Jeff and his company. But then I got down on Blackwelder, and I thought, this is not a good idea to put a 3-story building across from these. I mean, there are businesses up to where 15th jogs. There are businesses up to the west side of 15th Street, which I can see, you know, fronting those businesses. But further down, it just seems like it would be totally inappropriate to build a 3-story building across the street from those houses. And I know some of the people have given their consent and have voiced their approval, but I, you know, personally feel like it's inappropriate.
Well, and that's why we picked the spot that we did, that was the farthest away from the residential houses, and have the parking lot kind of buffering the houses on Marion and on the back side. So we felt that was the best use of the lot. And like I said, everybody else I've talked to at the city, J.A. Chambliss thought it was appropriate. Meg Salyer and Mr. Bright all loved the design of the building and the size of it. And the main thing here also is we're adding almost 100 parking places. And that, I think, is with the one letter of disapproval, was the big concern was parking. And parking is horrible down in the plaza. And people parking on both sides of the street is, with the 45-degree parking, would make that a lot easier, where people could just park on one side of the street, and so people could definitely get through. So that's kind of one of the big things is the parking, trying to relieve some of the parking problems.
Can you talk a little bit about the parking and who would have access to that parking? You have 66 surface parking spots on the site, in the parking lot, and then it looks like another 27 on the street, is that correct?
Yeah, I think we came up with like 90 some. But but we're still, like I said, with the engineering we just got everything surveyed, and the engineers will be able to tell us exactly how many parking spaces we have there. And with the crushed granite, we thought about that a lot. Across the street is our office, and it's a crushed granite parking lot, and we used larger aggregate in the crushed granite, and we've not had a problem over there with, mud and stuff coming out of the parking lot. And that's also why we did the driving lanes in cement, so that way that kind of keep any of that from going into the city street. But also, I think to use the coarser granite, crushed granite, not the fine granite, I think is one of the keys to keeping it from being muddy.
So who would have access to the two different classifications of parking, the 66 that are in the lot and then the other 27 that are along the street? Would they be restricted to the buildings on this spud, or would it be open to?
It'd be open parking. I mean, on the back side of the building, there'll be some parking spaces that will be for the tenants, but everything else will be open parking for anybody to use.
Okay. How about the food truck locations? Where would that be happening?
That is the 3 spots there by the trees, right there. And that we kind of were trying to do something kind of neat and fun to kind of buffer the parking a little bit too, so you have something else going on instead of just a sea of cars. So we're trying to make that a little more friendlier, and every weekend there's food trucks just parked in random places in the plaza, so that'd be a nice way to have a couple places that they'd have set up.
And will you have power?
Yes, we were planning on having power to that too. So
They will not be running on generators?
Yes, that is one of my pet peeves I don't like. So yeah, we would definitely have power there for them to use.
Okay. Other questions? Comments?
I have a question. What you show for the location of the food trucks, you said by the trees?
There's 3 spots, kind of parallel. There's arrows that say food truck,
Okay.
right there.
That's part of Tract 1, right?
That is, yes. And with Tract 1, when we get I'm sure the parallel parking run through the city, we're going to have to come back in front of you guys with an application for our trash can. And I guess we had a demolition of a duplex that's in this that I didn't realize it has to be done in 6 months or it expires. So we're going to have to come back for that. I wasn't aware of that. So we will have to come back for Tract 1 for your all's approval when we get to before we start doing anything.
Well, I was curious about the conditions for Tract 2 on the master design statement. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right one. So why would food trucks be allowed on track 2? Where would they be there?
Just on the plan, that made more sense to us. I mean, there was no big, that just made the most sense. And to kind of block the sea of cars too.
I think our point is that the food trucks on the drawing are part of track 1, and in the written, are they listed as part of track 2? Is that the problem, Donna?
Well, the question, I'm concerned, like Betsy, with encroachment into the neighborhood. What are the uses that are going to be allowed closest to the existing residences? And so I'm looking at the list of what's allowed, and it seemed like, why push the food trucks further into the neighborhood? Personal services, residential, administrative. I'm not sure about repair services, so that's not automotive or anything.
No, that would not be automotive. No, it was just like fixing computers or doing, we are hoping to get maybe some artists or some offices, maybe some live workspaces in that first floor. And that was a lot of the revisions we did with the neighborhood and some of the surrounding neighbors, if taking things out of there, restrictions out of what could be there. And like I said, Classen Tenpen and Matthew Fong, that both did letters of approval, are been some of the biggest voices in the neighborhood on development. And so we felt really, good to work with them. And like I said, we changed a lot of things in it that really made more sense, and that was a good, took us a little time, but I think working with the neighbors really, the neighborhood association was happy with what was there, and that's why they wrote a letter and voted in their meeting unanimously to be in favor of this project.
So, based on the proposal in the drawing here, would it be acceptable to eliminate 8300.41, food and beverage retail stores, the part that says to include mobile food trucks, food sales, from the track 2 listing, since they are included in the track 1 plan, but not the track 2 plan?
Yeah, I would be good with that. That was all we were planning on in track 1, closer to the...
The way to do that would just be to put track 1 only after that listing. That would take care of it.
So, Donna, would that?
Yeah, that addresses it. That was the most intensive. Well, and I was concerned about noise and just scale, where they would be located. The other thing on this, so there's a couple existing homes that'll be demolished on 15th?
Well, we have a property owner in the, matter of fact, that's in the area that has some vacant lots, and they are wanting to move the houses. So I said, well, I'd love to not tear them down, and if we could move them to another location. So that is in the works right now. We're working with him to move those houses, and they're within a few, the vacant lots are really close, so it wouldn't be that expensive to move the houses.
And so that would leave one house on 15th, but it faces east?
I'll say that again, I'm sorry.
That would leave one house left
Yes.
on that block?
Mm-hmm. On Marion, on the corner of Marion,
And the screening between this and that last house would be the fence?
Well, the fence, and then also one thing we worked out with with the neighbors is to put in a noise barrier on the back side of the fence. It's a fabric. That, matter of fact, that one of the neighbors found and suggested, and we said we'd love, so we incorporated that and some more landscaping on that area. But so we're going to put this. It's a noise fabric. That's what it's, a plastic that we are going to incorporate into the wood fence that helps with the light and noise. So that was something that, in meeting with the neighbors, we agreed to do.
But the landscaping is only on track 2, correct?
Right.
Not on track 1.
The 5 foot.
There's no room for it on track 1.
On track 1, and we've already kind of got that part approved, but really in a far earlier, on the front building, the Goro building, but by code, the parking needs to have a 5-foot landscape barrier, so we wanted to make sure that that was all good for the long run. So with so on track 2, we do have a 5-foot landscape barrier, and then in the corner, it's even bigger there to kind of protect the homeowners there.
Did the homeowners have a preference? It said a minimum of 6-foot fence, maximum of 8 foot.
The 6-foot fence is what we worked out with the property owners, along with they were real concerned with the noise screening. So that was kind of we came up with that, and then making a little more landscaping there.
And were you agreeable about the change in the size of the monument size?
Yes, we didn't, that was just part of the language in the SPUD, the 8-foot, so the 6-foot is in the 800 square feet is fine with us. Yeah, we just wanted on that corner to have a flower bed with a sign there, and we might not even be 6 feet, so I'm fine with that, definitely.
And Michael, does the height include the base, or is it the
Yes.
top of the base?
Yeah.
So it's
To
from
the
the
top of the
ground.
sign.
Yeah, so we're good with that, because we don't want a big thing there, big sign.
So Jeff, first off, I applaud you for working so closely with the neighborhood and the neighbors proactively on the front end of this. That is always helpful. It sounds like you're agreeable to all of the staff recommendations for changes except for building height, and all the suggestions that you've gotten from the panel here you seem agreeable to.
Mm-hmm.
Betsy's issue is also with the building, I guess, size, or you can talk.
It's the height, and, the city is working to put together a traditional neighborhood ordinance or overlay, and this type of project is exactly kind of flying in the face of that type of ordinance, because this is kind of totally different than the surrounding neighbors, the nice little craftsman houses, the house that the person wrote about. I didn't even notice this house, but it's pretty nice, and it just kind of, I know we're all about doing different things and stuff like that, but I think that this is, I like the way that Michael put it, is extending that commercial zone down the street and kind of starting to disperse it. Anyway, I'm not going to be moved about the height, regardless of who has said that it seems okay to them.
So Betsy, is it the height or the use?
It's really the height. I mean, if they want to do commercial, that's up to them, but it's really the scale of the building. There's lots of buildings that look like that, so it's probably not that big a deal, but it's more the height, the massing of the
And
building.
today, I drove around the blocks area, and there's probably about 25 houses that are 3-story houses that have windows in them up top. They're probably attics, but there's a lot of really tall houses. Even on 13th and Klein, there's a 3-story building going up right now, and the houses on that whole block are 3 stories. So in the neighborhood, there are a lot of small bungalows, but there are a big, vast mix of styles and architecture and sizes and mass. There are. It's not just, there's just a bunch of things going on in the neighborhood, along with apartment buildings and stuff in the middle of the neighborhood and stuff. So there's a lot of different things going on. It's not your traditional, suburban neighborhood where everything's the same height or the same size,
Right.
But
I think, it's definitely my personal opinion, but I'd be really pissed off if this was going to be built across the street from me. So
Yeah.
And I can definitely understand where this dissenter was coming from.
Excuse me, my allergies are killing me. I drove by on Monday, and I don't know that it entirely echoes Betsy's comments, but I thought the scale, as I was driving down that street, what this would do to that street caused me a little bit of concern, probably more so than if I had just looked at the plan. So the scale of it in relation to the adjacent houses concerns me a little bit.
Would you happen to know what the, I know you own all the buildings that I'm talking about, what the height is on the existing buildings on Tract 1 and also in your office across the street here?
You know, I do not. I do not know the exact heights.
Also, a minute ago, you mentioned something about demolition of a duplex that's going to, the demolition permit's going to expire. Is that one of the ones on 15th here?
No, this one, there's an existing duplex here, kind of in the middle of Tract 1.
Okay, so that will be demoed?
No. Immediately adjacent to the south of that one, there's another one that sits right here that the commission approved for demolition last year. However, there's an anomaly in the CAs for demolitions in the UDC that they're only good for 6 months as opposed to 2 years. So as a result of that, Mr. Struble was not aware of the fact that it had expired, which I think it expired in November. So he will have to come back to the commission to...
But all of that is already represented in these drawings?
Yeah.
Okay.
The buildings that would remain after that demolition are no longer shown as part of this SPUD site plan.
What will the uses be of the existing two small buildings there, that one and the one just north of that?
That one right there he's on is a duplex. It's a residential duplex, and it's a nice building. It'll say, and it's a tall 2-story building.
It's going to remain residential?
Yeah, it'll remain residential. And then that is a 4-plex.
Okay. Also to remain residential?
For the time being, we're probably looking at plans to make that down the way another some kind of a retail.
Okay.
Before the commission continues, I'm sorry, I got one more issue I need to throw out there, which I did identify earlier in the process to the applicant, I believe, but I didn't make any mention of it either in the staff report or in my summary of the new issues today. We are somewhat concerned about this row of parking here on the southerly borderline. You can see that the stalls extend out into the public right-of-way here. And I believe that that requires approval by the Traffic Commission, if I'm not mistaken. And quite frankly, we'd prefer if they were just pushed back and you'd probably lose a stall all the way across. You'd probably lose 4 stalls in order to do that. But we do have concerns about those stalls extending over into the public right-of-way.
And that is something we're looking at with the survey and with Wallace, and we'll definitely have all that on the property.
Our concern just is that if this SPUD gets approved, this site plan, it would allow those stalls to remain there, and that would be a concern of ours. And of course, the project itself would not need to come back to the commission because it's not in the UD.
Well, and then too, I'll go back to that's Track 2 that's not in urban design, and I'm fine if you want to. Put in there that you approve everything, but what's in Track 2, that's not in urban design. I know that Michael's taken it on to say that's something we need to look at, and I agree, but that's something it's in the neighborhood.
Can you clarify? The staff report had said plans included in the agenda packet are for informational purposes only. No design review can be taken at this time. So are we reviewing these, or these are just for information?
You're giving it a...
I'm sorry, which report, part of the report are you talking about?
It's on page 2, under intended uses.
Yeah, 3rd paragraph.
And the question?
Well, about this, what you were just pointing out about the parking. This has to be considered and approved or not approved now, or we're going to see this again?
No, you will not see this, again, anything in Track 2, the improvements in Track 2 are not inside the urban design overlay boundary.
So only track 1
Only
changes
Track
come
1, and pretty much what you see in Track 1 is already there, except for the demolition of that duplex project.
So I have a question for legal. Because this SPUD includes properties in UDC, don't we have to make a recommendation on all of it or none of it?
Well, I think you can make a recommendation really several ways, but you're only recommending anyway, so you can recommend as far as to the Track 2 because that affects the district. So you'd have to show how that Track 2 affects the district. So you can make a recommendation based on that. So, I mean, I think they're separate. Did that answer your question?
And I think too, with that also, Betsy, I think that could be something that everything is, you're in favor of everything but the size of the building in Track 2, and everything else you're in favor of. I think that could be a solution too.
We have people here to speak, right? Maybe, I'd be more concerned, what do the neighbors think? We've gotten letters in favor, one opposed.
Is there anyone else that wants to comment on this? No.
My name's Tyler Holmes. I am the active designer on this project. In regards to the existing design of the building, it's not complete. It is a concept. The actual limits of the size of the footprint is set in stone, but scale, I am in agreement that there are improvements to be made to it. In regards to the height, it's, as shown in the rendering, I believe it's 37 feet. There are homes in the neighborhood within a block that there's one that's 34 feet tall, according to Google Earth, but you can take fairly accurate measurements. But it probably would be slightly taller, but the size can still be reduced and improvements can be made. So don't see that as a final design. All this input is appreciated. On a ground to pedestrian level, the scale can be improved, but in regard to the site, Track 1 is what's being proposed, and Track 2 is virtually a concept.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're about to lose quorum, so if we're going to make any motions here, it needs to be done now, or it is not going to get done. Do I have a motion?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
He just said that he didn't need 40 feet height. Why are you asking for 40 feet if 38 would do?
Okay, we're going to lose quorum if we
Okay.
don't make a motion right now.
Yeah.
Which is fine. If we don't make a motion, it'll be continued to the next, to the next.
I'd rather not do that, and then 37 would be fine.
Or no, or
we'd
you can
probably
make
do
a
best to
recommendation
continue
for no
it.
recommendation.
Do I have a motion including continuance as an
He doesn't
option?
want a continuance, though.
No.
If he doesn't agree to a continuance, I'm sorry, if he doesn't agree to a continuance, then it'll just, no recommendation.
Okay.
I mean, you had the opportunity to comment, so.
Is there a motion? Anyone?
I'm not sure what the motion would be. We have so many
I know.
conditions. Honestly, I could make a motion if there could be some direction to conditions, but I've lost track of how many staff conditions there are.
Okay, we've lost quorum.
We've lost quorum. Okay,
No action.
so,
So in that, then, you could just do no action with that? I mean, that's an option?
That is, I mean, they have the opportunity to comment, and they had that opportunity, so.
Okay, so that'll be recorded as no action, is what you're saying, Susan.
Right, if he doesn't agree to continuance, because we
Yeah,
can't do anything
Well,
now.
they can't continue it.
Yeah, I was going to say, we can't do anything now, so it's just.
So this will go on to planning with no action from you guys, basically?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
that's right.
Tyler, are you coming back?
Tyler, you're back. So we have quorum back for the rest of the agenda items. All right, Jeff, sorry about that. So, moving on with our agenda here. Next is election of officers. Do we have motions? Volunteers?
Are you wanting to stay on?
I am willing to stay on.
I nominate Matt. Chair? Chair?
Second that.
I have to accept that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Vice Chair, do I have nominations? Are you willing to stay on? Do I have a motion?
Nominate Jorge for vice chair.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Okay, item 8, communications, the administrative approval report. I understand there are people here that would like to make a couple of comments about some of the items on here. First, Michael, can you run us through? Both of these are related to each other, so we can do both at the same time before comments.
The first one was approved in December of last year, and subsequent to that approval, we learned that one aspect of that approval was probably invalid with respect to how it meets or does not meet the applicable provisions of the subdivision regulations. And with respect to how the plat for this project was platted and the size of it, with a 24-foot space for the drive access between the two rows of homes. So that aspect of the revision was rescinded by the applicant, and we subsequently issued a corrected version of the same set of revisions in item number 2 for the same project, and that was approved on January 9th. And the appeal period for it expired yesterday, and there was an appeal filed. Yes, there was.
So that's an appeal to the administrative decision.
Okay.
So essentially, there are a variety of changes proposed to the buildings now. The issue of the changing of the width of the drive access is no longer part of the official approval. The changes that were entailed in the revisions to the buildings included changes in height to both the 2-story and 3-story units, but they still remain within the 50-foot height limit. And then there are other changes to add downspouts, change materials, move a window, add a window, just a lot of miscellaneous architectural revisions that were approved to essentially all 14 of the buildings. So.
I guess I'm not surprised that there's an appeal. This was a pretty contentious item when it came across our desk. Would anyone like to speak to this? Please state your name and address.
I'm Jessica Nelson. I live at 604 Northwest 7th Street, and I am representing the SOSA Neighborhood Association. I'd like to speak about this administrative approval. We believe that the staff might have erred in approving it administratively, in that there has been more than 20% of a change in the design. And as you mentioned, Chairman, that this was contentious from the beginning, and as you guys have said, even today, there has been concern about height and scale in neighborhoods, and that was, those are big issues with this project, and we believe that the neighborhood and the public at large has a reason to know why staff would approve all of these changes given this project. So we request that the commission take action at its February meeting to recommend to the Board of Adjustment that it remand this matter back to the commission for further review. Thank you.
Sorry, are you part of the appeal?
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just, Jessica, I think you were saying, your request was that the commission hear this at their February meeting and make a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, that the Board of Adjustment remand it back to UDC. Is that what?
That is.
And my question to legal was, is that?
No, that's already at the board. Now, the board, if they want to remand it back to this commission, then the board would have that power to do that.
You'll have to make the recommendation or the request of the BOA to.
I think where we had a difficult time with it is we believe that there were more changes than in the plan than should have been able to be approved by staff. And so we believe that the staff administrative.
It's still but we're saying it doesn't, the administrative approvals don't get appealed to the commission.
Okay.
They get appealed to the Board of
And then we're
Adjustment.
asking the board to send it back to you guys.
Yes.
Okay, got
Right.
it.
Now,
Thank
you
you.
can appeal their interpretation if you felt that way with your own appeal, but if you felt that they were wrong on their administrative approval interpretation, but that would be a separate
Yeah, they've
action item.
They've enumerated that in the appeal from the Neighborhood Association. They enumerated that they thought staff exceeded the threshold.
Okay. Oh.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Bleakley. I'm Vice President of the Sosa Neighborhood Association, and I reside at 607 Northwest 7th. As the chair pointed out, this, on its initial application, was a very contentious application that was opposed by a significant number of area residents. This is before we formed our neighborhood association. We were greatly concerned about the density and height of this project, and I'm glad to hear the sensitivity on the board to those kind of issues. This is on 4 lots, which typically in this neighborhood would have had 4 to 8 residences, depending on whether they were single family or duplexes, and we now have 14 units on these 4 lots within the Sosa Neighborhood Association, and this is also within city nomenclature is the Cottage District. The developers of this came to your staff with 11 changes, which we think are significant and we believe is over the 20%. But even if it wasn't over the 20%, I think the nature of this matter was such that the staff under your regulations has the opportunity to bring it to the commission as a whole to consider it instead of issuing an administrative report. The effect of issuing an administrative report is we, the neighborhood, have absolutely no say or opportunity to give our opinions on this, and the commission has no opportunity to weigh on these issues. The only way that we can bring it before this commission and have an opportunity to speak is to file an appeal to the Board of Adjustment. We had to pay a $750 filing fee to do that. And what we're asking the Board of Adjustment to do is to remand it to the commission so that you can consider all the issues that we are presenting and make a decision as it is basically within your jurisdiction. There are issues about the height. Not only are they increasing the height, but we think they are increasing it over the 50-foot limit. The density is increased by adding another foot because the garages weren't wide enough for 2 cars, so now they've increased the density even more to accommodate the vehicles. There is a private access drive that I think under the new thing has now moved off of the dedicated right-of-way for the private access drive on the plat and has to be addressed. So there's a lot of significant issues. So it needs to be, we feel, remanded by the Board of Adjustment to come back to this commission. Now, under your own procedures or under the code, you have the ability to say to the Board of Adjustment, we would like it remanded back so we can consider these issues. And those are in section 4250.5, subsection 14, that says you have the ability to make recommendations to the Board of Adjustment that it be returned to this body for consideration. So what we're asking today is, would you please put it on your agenda for your February meeting to have consideration of a resolution to the Board of Adjustment, asking them to remand this back for your consideration. We would greatly appreciate that opportunity, so we too could speak to this body about these very important issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we found it, thank you.
Okay. And we'll,
I think the way that I read that is that they have the opportunity, this board has the opportunity to comment upon and provide a recommendation of something that's already at the other board. But since this is an appeal, I'm not sure that that really is applicable. I have not seen that done that way.
when would this hit Board of Adjustment? It's their March meeting.
I think that can be interpreted anyway. It doesn't specifically say either way whether something is up there. But as you said earlier, it's already up there. I'm sorry. As you said, the issue is already up there. We filed the appeal, so the issue is there. And what we're asking you to do is to give yourselves the opportunity, because you were concerned the first time it came up with regard to the mass and the size, as what you had a lot of questions for the residents of the district, just like we had some questions for you. So since it was that contentious, you were the board that made that decision, and we'd like you to see the massive size that they're putting up, both in height and width, when they told you they weren't going to do that. They even showed you pictures of how the other houses would be able to see the skyline even after they built them. Well, if they go up the other 2.5 feet, it's blocking that completely, even if those pictures were real to start off with. So we're just asking, we're going to, if you say no, we're going to go make the argument to the Board of Adjustment. But since we want you to have the opportunity, since you made the first decision on it, to hear the residents of the district and make a decision on the added, to see the evidence that they gave you initially, if it was really true.
And I appreciate your point of view there. We will, I'll get with staff and legal and figure out before the February meeting whether or not that's something that is, we'll take that under advisement before the February meeting.
Thank you very much.
Could you state your name and?
Yes, my name is Linda Mioli, and I reside at 607 Northwest 7th.
Thank you, just for the record.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Any comments from commissioners on this?
On this, no. I just had a comment. Did we miss anything on that previous, what's the action that goes to commission? Can you clarify?
It'll be no action. We'll send them an email saying that.
On the previous one?
The previous case, yeah.
Saying that the commission took no action.
Okay, so they can still consider it. We're not holding them up.
All we were doing was making a recommendation to them, so basically we're just not making a recommendation.
Right. Yeah, they will still move through Planning Commission and Council on the schedule they had anticipated.
Okay, Michael, the last administrative approval was on 23rd Street.
Sorry, yes. There was an approval there for a sign on property that's just east of the Tower Theater.
Okay. Comments from staff?
No, nothing.
Comments from commission members? I'd like to say I apologize for I didn't realize we were going to be losing quorum at 45 minutes into the meeting. So for the future, if there is a hard stop for any others, if we can make that known on the front end, that could be helpful. Any other members have comments? All right, next meeting is February 22nd. And with that, we're adjourned.